Hi, I'm Jaclyn,
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
featuring my cat that just sneezed. So hopefully you did not hear that. But if you did, it was a really cute sneeze. So I feel like it's okay. It's not like a human sneeze that was gross that nobody wants to hear. Like
Hmm.
everyone likes a cat sneeze, right? Like,
A little cute cat sneeze.
yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like a cat sneeze is always cute. Also, Courtney and I have a new like recording process
Yeah.
and it tells us when we're recording. So I didn't have to count down. So it was really weird for me. I was just like, I just clicked and then I started talking. And normally I'm like 3, 2, 1. And it just kind of threw me off, you know? I didn't know quite what to clearly as I continue to just ramble utter nonsense. I don't know, guys.
It happens, and we have a new process, and Jacqueline and new things
Ugh.
aren't always great. So
I just want to
we're a
say
work in progress.
I have fully embraced it. This is week 2 of us recording this new way.
Hmm.
And I didn't even try to go back to the old way, did I, Courtney? I didn't challenge it.
You
I
did
didn't.
not.
I'm very proud of myself. I'm
Maybe in
here.
a few weeks, we might be pulling our hair out for some reason that we've yet to discover, like we did when we started this podcast.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline sent me, here's what I edited, and it came to me completely wrong. So, if that happens, we
Ooh.
might be questioning things. But for now, it's been smooth sailing for now.
Yes. On our end at least, and as far as we can tell listening back. But if you guys hear any major audio differences in this week's episode and last week's episode compared to older episodes, let us know because we don't want to we're trying to improve here. So if it's
Mhm.
not an improvement, let us know and we'll make some more adjustments.
Because I believe with this new method, you should hear less background noise, which I
Yes.
think was probably our biggest, not our best problem, our biggest problem.
I mean,
Best problem?
best in what
I don't
way? I
know.
mean, yeah. Also, I've said it before and I'll say it again, but now that professional podcasts have been recording like in their own homes, I feel a lot better about our audio quality because they have like professional equipment and professional like sound engineers and stuff, and they still have mic bumps and dogs barking and
Hmm.
all kinds of random stuff. So, I don't feel so bad about that.
It happens. And maybe you're listening in the car and there's so much interstate noise you don't even notice.
That's true. That is true. Also, one of the upsides, I don't know, changes with this way that we are recording is that we don't have like a time count anymore. So we may just talk forever because we have no idea how long we've been talking.
That's so true. And I meant to look to see if there was a way to put a timer on because I feel like there is.
Probably.
You know what? Pause. Let's see. Might be one of those things. It's not going to happen until next time. There is a timestamp option. So maybe I don't actually know what it means.
Well, I know at the time we are recording this is 5:55 p.m. and I need to nurse my daughters at 7 p.m. before she goes to bed.
Your daughters?
Yeah, I don't know what just happened there, but we're just going with it. It just
Multiple?
I don't
How
know.
many?
Maybe she has multiple personalities. She's a lot of kids, so maybe there's just a lot going
Are
on in
you
there.
like a cow and you have like 8 udders and like
Oh
eight
no.
kids?
Oh, I don't know.
Imagine.
Okay, if you guys have twins and you have nursed twins at the same time, God bless you. I don't understand. Or if you have like triplets and you're like trading out 3 babies on 2 boobs at all times, y'all are amazing. I don't
Mhm.
it's a lot. Anyway, okay. Well, now that we have talked too long about random stuff because we don't know how long we've been talking. I do want to give a shout out to our newest patron, which is actually my sister in law, Shelby. So thank you so much, Shelby. We are so happy to have you here. She just started listening recently, like a few weeks ago, and she lets me know like where she's at, and she's on episode 70, I think. So, I mean, she has been like listening to our voices nonstop. I don't know how she's not sick of me yet, but she loved us enough that she wanted to join and get all those bonus episodes too. So we love you, Shelby. We appreciate you. If you want to be like Shelby and get a shout out like this and get all of those bonus episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/caffeinated crimes.
Yeah, and maybe she's sick of you, but maybe she's not sick of me yet?
That's true. That's true.
Maybe she gets sick of me and then she's not sick of you. Maybe it just trades off where she's like, well, I like one of them at all times. Maybe
So
that's the perk of two people podcasts.
that is true. I feel like also when you usually have two podcasters, like you usually like one more than the other. So I wonder how many people just like hate me and love you, or maybe vice versa. But
I don't want to know. If you hate me,
no,
please don't tell me. I'm
don't
too
tell us that.
fragile.
Yeah.
I'm too fragile.
Whoever you're here for, we're glad you're here.
I
We
can't
don't,
afford therapy to talk to my therapist about it. But if you want to say that you hate me, join the Patreon. And if we get enough, I can afford therapy. And then you can talk about how much you hate me. Okay.
Perfect. Full circle there.
We do have, unfortunately, another update of mass shootings will never stop in America until something's done. So there was a shooting in Tulsa, Oklahoma at St. Francis Hospital. So a man killed two doctors, Dr. Preston Phillips and Dr. Stephanie Husson, a receptionist, Amanda Glenn, and a patient, William Love. He had previously been a patient and he did blame the surgeon for his pain. And he actually did buy the weapon the same day. So again, if we have gun reform and we have background checks and waiting periods, I don't know, like you have to have even for an abortion, then maybe something could have been done or stopped. He did kill himself after the shooting. I'm not going to say his name because I feel like a lot of mass shooters just want the attention. So not going to say his name. There's been two shootings in Chattanooga. There was one Memorial Day weekend, and there was one last night at the time of this recording, where 3 people did die. So it's just everywhere. Like shootings just keep happening everywhere. And yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, I don't know. It feels like every time there's a mass shooting, like especially with the elementary school shooting, like people get very, very angry and everyone's like advocating, and then life goes on and we just don't talk about it anymore. But maybe this time will be different. We can only hope. But yeah, email your senator, demand change. I don't know. Do everything you can do.
Also, the last episode that we recorded was, I believe, the day after the Texas shooting. And so at that time, we said there have been 14 victims. I believe at this point, 19 was the last number I heard that had been confirmed dead.
I think so. And I believe also the teacher who died, her husband also, I think just from the grief and the stress, had a heart attack and also died. So now their children don't have either of their parents because of this tragedy. So just heartbreak all around. Yeah,
it's just something has to change, hopefully sooner rather than later.
And like, I don't mean to get on a platform here, but here I go. All right.
Please do.
And if you come and say like, guns don't kill people, people kill people, I agree. And that's why we want background checks for people and waiting lists for people and a list of people who, like the Buffalo shooter, had previously threatened to shoot up a school. You should be put on, we have no fly lists, no buy a gun list. You can't buy alcohol until you're 21, but you can go buy a gun at 18. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And like, the thing is, like, no one needs like an AK-47. No one needs an AR-15. No one needs those. And if you want a handgun or like a hunting rifle or shooting rifle, then you're going to go about the ways to get those. And if you have to wait 48 hours for a waiting list or a waiting period, you'll be okay. Exactly. Like, you'll be fine and it'll stop these and you won't have a loved one who dies from a mass shooting. So again, we're not saying like, oh, it's only the guns problem. Yeah, there is a people issue. And that's why you need to put
policies in place for the people. Like,
exactly. Like, maybe they have to have like a health thing. I mean, you have to go and take a test and a driving test to drive a car. Like,
you have to have your vision tested to drive a car. Like, you can't get a license if you can't pass the vision screening with whatever kind of, glasses, contacts, whatever that you may need to improve your vision. If you go to test and you don't have that, you can't get a license. You can't drive a vehicle. We have nothing like that for weapons. You can't drive a boat
without a boating license. Like, you can't do any of this.
Did you hear that in Ohio, they just passed, I don't know if they put it into law or if like where they're at in that process, but to make it legal for teachers to be armed on school premises, because that's not a fucking disaster waiting to happen.
Well, the problem with that too is the videos I've seen of like people talking about this is they're like, okay, yeah, we'll give teachers guns, but you got to train them and you got to do this and you got to do that. You don't even give teachers money to buy school supplies.
And okay.
So it's like,
so my husband is a veteran. He was in the Marine Corps. He was a rifle coach in the Marine Corps. So he like coached other Marines on how to shoot properly. And he's like, you would be amazed at like those people who can't shoot accurately, but you're going to give a random ass teacher who has no training in weapons a gun and expect them to get the shooter and not their classroom full of 27 children. Okay. Or you're not
Police
going to.
officers who have extensive training, when they have to shoot someone who's running or whatever, only get it accurate 30% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Police officers whose entire job is to know how to shoot a weapon.
And not only are you likely to fail at your target, but you are very likely to kill someone else in the process, especially in a school type setting where if you were in a small classroom and you try to shoot in one direction and like a kid is in the way, if a bullet ricochets, if you shoot into another classroom, like there's just way too many variables to have that make any kind of sense.
And also what I learned when I worked at the library, I had to have active shooter training, is you never want to take the weapon from the active shooter, because then when the police show up and you're standing there holding the gun, they're going to shoot you because they're like, we don't know who it is. It's the person with the gun. You shoot the person with the gun. So you're going to give teachers guns and then be like, hold on, who's a teacher? Show me your badge.
Right?
Like,
if you have
it's just
5 armed teachers who are trying to go after the shooter and then the police arrive, so now you have like 15 guns and no one knows who is actually the person who, like, how does this make any sense?
And then now you can just have someone pretend to be a teacher and show up with a weapon because, hey, I'm a teacher, I can have a weapon. Like, it's just not, that's not the way to solve these issues. It's just not it. And
what are going to be the rules for keeping this weapon? Like, are you going to have it locked up safely with the ammunition locked up separately? Probably not, because, then I can't get to it if I need it, which is what they always say.
And then a student can come take you over, grab it, use it. Like, it's just not the best solution.
More guns does not solve this problem. We learned that with the Texas shooting where the fucking coward cops stood outside and did nothing. So
it's not the issue. We need some kind of gun reform, and it does work. Look at other countries who have mass shootings. They put in some laws and it doesn't happen again. So we'll get off our soapbox now, but that's all we're saying.
And you know, guys, we know we've had the same conversation 30 damn times on this podcast. Why? Because this keeps happening, because this continues to happen over and over and over. And
yeah, there is a way to safely own guns. There is, like, a hunting rifle. You want to go hunting, like, you do you, boo. That's fine. You don't need an AK-47 to go hunting. And you just, it's just, in the state I live in now, I don't even have to have a permit to have a gun. I have no idea how to handle a gun. I don't know how to clean a gun. I don't know where the safety is. I don't know any of that, but I could go buy a gun and keep it in my house. So it's like, that's all I'm saying is, like, we need to have proper, like, classes and stuff like that. Like, I think you have to do that for hunting too. You have to do, like, certain classes. Like, that's all we're asking. That's all. The liberals are not coming into your homes and taking all your guns. I promise you. We're just trying to make the guns we have safer. Like, and maybe you can't have a weapon of mass destruction. I don't know. Like,
because you have no need for it. Please tell me what you need it for. Please.
The government's going to come and attack us. We need to protect ourselves. I've seen all the crazy conspiracies, but you know what? We're going to get on with our episode, because now I think we've been talking about this for 10 minutes.
Sorry, guys. We're just going to, diving on in now. Okay, so our sources for this week's episode were the TV show FBI Criminal Pursuit, Season 1, Episode 1, The Gainesville Ripper, the Shreveport Times, Oxygen.com, eOnline, All That's Interesting, and an ABC News article. In August of 1990, 5 college students were brutally murdered in their homes in Gainesville, Florida. The town was terrified and students were afraid to go to sleep at night. This series of murders would go on to be the basis for the movie Scream, which came out in December of 1996. On August 26, 1990, Gainesville, Florida police received a call from the Williamsburg apartment complex. No one had seen roommates 17-year-old Christina Powell and 18-year-old Sonia Larson for days. Both were students at the University of Florida, and the fall semester was supposed to start the next day. Christina's parents were at the apartment complex and demanding to be let into their apartment. So police arrived and entered the apartment with the maintenance man and the manager, while Christina's parents waited outside. Unfortunately, they came upon a very gruesome scene. The bodies of both girls were in the apartment and had likely been there for several days. Sonia's body was on her bed and had been pulled to the edge of the bed with her legs spread apart and her hair fanned out around her head. She had been stabbed multiple times, and police believed that she had been taken by surprise and was possibly sleeping at the time of the attack. There was evidence that her wrists had been bound with duct tape, but the killer had taken the duct tape with them. Christina's body was downstairs on the living room floor. She had been raped and her wrists had been bound with duct tape as well. She was lying on her back with her legs spread apart. Parts of her breasts had been removed post-mortem, and she had been stabbed in the back. A towel and a bottle of dishwashing soap had been left next to her body, so the investigators believed that the killer had tried to remove any evidence. However, the killer had also ejaculated into a paper towel in the kitchen and in the woods behind the house. So not very smart. You're washing the body to get the DNA evidence off, but you're just like all
leaving
over.
your jizz juice everywhere.
Yeah, I gave hand motions, but I guess this is a podcast, so you can't
really see that.
Yeah. Y'all know what I meant. It did appear that the killer had used a screwdriver to break into the apartment. Because of the brutal way both girls were murdered and the way their bodies had been mutilated and posed, police did believe that they had a serial killer on the loose. They're like, this isn't some random like killing. This isn't like a hitman kind of situation, And 12 years before, Ted Bundy had murdered several college students at Florida State University in Tallahassee. So the police are really worried that like, oh no, this is happening all over again. This is the same situation.
Yeah.
Friends who knew Sonia said that she was excited to be starting this new phase of her life and that she was a sweet and reserved girl who wanted to work with children. And Sonia and Christina had met the summer before and had decided to become roommates for their first year of college. All of the dorms were full, so they got the apartment off campus, but it was like student housing still. It was just off campus. So a task force was quickly assembled, including other jurisdictions and the FBI, and the autopsy revealed that the weapon used was some type of K-bar knife, which is used commonly in military combat. So because the killer had tried to destroy evidence, they also wondered if he had some kind of like police background or inside police knowledge, especially with this like K-bar knife specifically. So just a few hours later, the Alachua County Sheriff's Office became concerned when 18-year-old Krista Hoyt did not show up for her midnight shift as a records clerk. So a deputy was dispatched to her house at 12:30 a.m. on August 27th, which good for them. Like you're 30 minutes late and they're like, we're sending somebody to your house because this is not normal. And obviously it's a police department. So they're probably, more on top of that thing than another employer would be, but they're not waiting,
Yeah.
So there was no answer at Krista's door, so the deputy began walking around the house. The house did have a chain link fence, and he noticed that part of it was like pushed down, like someone had like walked on top of it, like it had kind of been like knocked over. And it looked like the lock on the sliding glass door had been tampered with, and the blinds were slightly raised on one side, so he was able to look in and see inside the house. He did find Krista's body lying on her bed. She had been raped and stabbed multiple times with evidence of duct tape on her wrists. And she had also been decapitated. And to make it worse, her body was posed propped up in a sitting position on the end of her bed with her head on her bookshelf, like looking at her body. So like this killer is like...
That's disgusting.
Yeah. And parts of her breasts have been removed as well. And her autopsy did show that the murder weapon was likely the same type that had killed both Sonia and Christina. Again, this is like the very next night, like a few hours later. Like I said, Krista did work part-time at the sheriff's office while she was also attending Santa Fe Community College, and she lived 2 miles away from Christina and Sonia. So investigators are working to find a link between these three girls. So obviously all three of them were college students, but they couldn't find any other connection between them. So obviously you have the University of Florida, which is huge. You have several community colleges. So it's not uncommon that someone of that age would be a college student. Like, what else can we find to tie them together that makes any sense of why someone would kill both of them?
Yeah, I feel like statistically, especially like in a college town, like even in Knoxville, I would think, 18 to 21.
Yeah.
More than likely, probably more than half, you're going to be a college student of some form.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously fear spread among the community and the University of Florida college students, as well as the students of, like we said, the other community colleges there. Police patrols did increase in the area. People were afraid to go to sleep. The parents of these college students who like live in other parts of the country are like, should I bring my kids home? Like, do I need to go pick them up? Again, this is like right before like the fall semester was starting. So they're like, do we need to like not do this semester? Like, what is happening?
Just have a leap year here. We'll come back in the winter.
Exactly. So that same day, police noticed two suspicious men near some woods. So they called for them to stop, and one of the men stayed, but the other one ran off. So the man who stayed said that his accomplice's name was Mike Kennedy. And in the woods, police found a campsite along with a lot of cash stained with red dye. So there had been a bank robbery in the area earlier that week, and the suspects had been on the run. So they're like, okay, this is probably who these two guys are. The man who stayed behind was arrested, but the other man did get away. And along with the money, police found a tape recorder with a tape inside, but they didn't listen to it for many months because it wasn't really relevant. Because they're like, we got the guys for like the cash is right here. Like we don't need a confession, you know. Obviously, this will come back later. Not just telling you about some random bank robbers in Florida,
and then they never come up again.
Exactly. We should start doing that. See if people like notice. Like, what did this part have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Although I feel like older true crime books do that a lot, where they like not even just like a red herring, but they just throw in random stuff that you think is relevant and it's not.
Yeah, like they'll have like 2 whole chapters about this murder, and then they'll be like, but it was later found it wasn't Ted Bundy. It's like, okay, well, I'm glad I heard her story, but what about Ted Bundy?
Yeah, which is fine when you're just like reading a book for information. But when you're doing podcast research, it's really annoying when you take a whole bunch of notes on someone and then you're like, delete. This was not important. Not important, but not relevant to the story that we are telling.
Especially when you're reading a book, you're usually doing like a serial killer and you already have 3 hours of content.
Exactly. So at this time, the FBI created a profile of the killer, and they did believe that he would be unemployed or work like a low-skilled job. They thought he would be physically strong, average or above average intelligence, and that he would be narcissistic. On August 28th, the manager of Gatorwood Apartments received a call from someone who was worried about their friend, Manuel Tabota, because they had not seen him in a few days and he wasn't answering his phone. So Manuel lived with Tracy Pollies, and they were both 23 years old. He was a student at Santa Fe City College studying architecture, and Tracy was a pre-law student majoring in political science at the University of Florida. So when the friend entered the apartment, they did find Tracy's body in the hallway, so they immediately left to wait for police. I can't imagine how terrifying that must be at the time, knowing that like there's a serial killer on the loose and I haven't heard from my friends, and you're like, I'm sure they're fine. I'm going to get there. And like their phone's off the hook or they're away or whatever. And then you get there and you're like, fuck no, like I was right, you know?
Yeah.
So both the friend and the apartment manager noticed a black bag, but it was gone when police arrived. So this led them to believe that they like just barely missed the killer, because like both of them said, no, I saw a bag right here, and then left. And then by the time they entered with police, the bag was gone. So Tracy was on her back, and it did appear that she had been dragged from her bedroom into the hallway. Her wrists also appeared to have been bound with tape before she was killed, and she was stabbed 3 times in the back with the same type of weapon as the other murders. She had been raped and her body was posed and cleaned, but had not been mutilated post-mortem like the other bodies had been, which is interesting. Manuel was found in his bed and had been stabbed many times. He also had a lot of defensive wounds all over his body. He was 6'1" and pretty physically fit, so they did believe that he had been attacked first, like maybe while he was sleeping, and that he like attempted to fight off his killer but was unable to, and then the killer was able to kill him before going on to kill Tracy. So they noticed many similarities between the murders, including that the killer had used something like a screwdriver to enter the back doors, and that all of the homes were in wooded areas so that the killer could easily escape into them. So the community really just continued to panic. So mace and gun sales increased. Sorority houses hired 24/7 security guards. The colleges all canceled classes for the week. They postponed tuition due dates, which is huge. I mean, for a college to say like, okay, you can pay this later. Like they realize some shit's going down. Yeah. The University of Florida also gave off-campus students the opportunity to temporarily move into dorms on campus because they had increased security there. They also set up toll-free hotlines so that students could call their parents and check in without having to pay for long-distance charges. Because obviously this is before the time of cell phones. So if you're calling your parents across the country, you're paying a lot of money. So they did set up these toll-free lines so that they could easily reach their families and let them know they were okay.
I gotta say, even though as a Tennessee fan who is born and bred to hate Florida, especially the University of Florida.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah.
Like, good on them for doing all this and being like, okay, go ahead, move into the dorms. We're not going to charge you. Like actually like doing the right thing. I think because so many times we see the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Especially colleges who are just money hungry and don't give a shit about other things. Like they really like seem to care about the students and doing the best they can in this situation.
yeah.
There's a huge media frenzy. Reporters were coming in from all over the country to cover these murders. If you are familiar with the Scream franchise, a lot of these details were included in the movie as far as canceling classes and the frenzy of the media and like just this huge community panic of like everyone like locked down and like the killer is on the loose, you know?
Courtney Cox comes in with her media team.
Gail
Weathers, is that her name?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gail Weathers. Okay. I'm surprised I remember that.
So detectives investigated around 675 suspects, and the name Ed Humphreys came up multiple times. So he lived in the Gatorwood apartments and was seen in the area of the murders. And police said that he was like acting very erratic. And on August 30th, he was arrested for assaulting his grandmother. So he was interrogated for hours and had specific details of the crime scene, like the position of the bodies, the fact that they had been cleaned. Like he knew a lot of these details. His grandmother did not want to press charges for her assault, but the state did, so he was held in custody. And on September 6th, the police received a warrant to search his car, apartment, and his grandmother's house. They did find several knives and screwdrivers and also sent his DNA off for testing to compare to DNA that was left behind on some of the bodies, despite the attempts to clean up. So again, the killer tried to clean up, but also ejaculated everywhere. So I don't know. So Ed went to trial for the assault on his grandmother in October and was sentenced to 22 months in a mental hospital. And they really believed at this time that they had physical evidence tying him to the crime scene because there were hair and fibers that they couldn't definitively rule out as his. And I guess at that time, they thought that was strong physical evidence that you couldn't say, no, these are not a match, but they weren't like a match. You know, but eventually the result of the blood test came back and his blood type did not match that of the semen left behind at the murders. So Ed Humphreys was not this killer. And I guess I just did what people say and throw in it. But it's important to the story because he was like the first primary suspect.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I think if they're an actual suspect,
yeah, not just some random, Anyway, so investigators entered information from these 5 murders into VICAP. So VICAP stands for Violent Criminal Apprehension Program and is used to record details of crimes to catch serial predators. So the description of the victims, the manner of death, the manner of entry into the home, weapons used, any of these like little details are all entered into VICAP, and it will like let you know if there are other crimes that are similar across the country. So like if someone in, California has also used a screwdriver or used a certain type of knife or done a very specific thing to a body, things like that, VICAP can help kind of catch these predators who, like in the 70s where they could just move all over and no one had any idea because there was nothing to tie them together. Yeah. So when they put all of this into VICAP, they did find an unsolved triple homicide from Shreveport, Louisiana from November of the previous year.
So 8-year-old Sean Grisham was visiting his grandfather, William, and Aunt Julie for his birthday weekend. And at 8:30 a.m. on Monday, November 6, 1989, Sean's mother called police because Sean did not return home and she could not get a hold of her father-in-law. She also called his school to make sure his grandfather hadn't just like taken him straight to school that morning, but he wasn't there either. So William, he went by Tom Grisham, was 55 years old and a supervisor at AT&T, and he'd been battling throat cancer, but was doing well and was set to retire soon. He was described as polite, friendly, and respectable, and his daughter, 24-year-old Julie, was studying marketing at Louisiana State University at Shreveport, and she worked part-time at Dillard's and would be graduating soon. So police reached out to Tom and Julie's neighbors and asked if the home was unlocked. So just some good old police work there from the 80s.
Can you guys is it open? All right, y'all go check it out and let us know if we really need to come out.
I'm a little scared. Can you go over there and open the door?
Can you go first? Because I don't want to. That'd be me as a cop.
Yeah, same. I don't want to open the door. And that's why I'm not a cop.
Right.
So lights were on inside the home, and the Sunday and Monday newspapers were outside. So 3 neighbors entered the home around 8:45 a.m. through the utility door off the garage, and Tom's body was slumped against the utility door, blocking the entrance, and he had been stabbed in the back and chest. So neighbors are like, we gotta get out of here.
Nope.
Nope.
I don't get paid for this.
This is not my job. So they left and waited for police. And Sean was found face down in the family room with 1 knife wound to his back, and he'd been watching TV. Julie was found naked and partially hanging off of her bed, and her arms were around her head and her hair fanned out around her body. And she'd been stabbed at least 3 times in her back, and her body had been posed after her death. And if you remember, previously we mentioned another victim being posed. So I think that's a pretty big red flag right there. Red flag. So the killer had used vinegar to clean her body and put her clothes in the washing machine and started it. And her wrist appeared to have been taped while the killer was there as well. And Tom had been out grilling at some point that night, and Julie had plans to attend a friend's wedding. So investigators guessed they had been murdered between 6 and 8 p.m. on Saturday night, and there was no sign of forced entry and no signs of a struggle, and nothing had been taken from the home either. So Florida investigators reviewed the evidence from this unsolved triple homicide, and they found many similarities in the manners of death, cleaning, and posing the body, and the murder weapon appeared to be the same type of knife. So investigators now began searching for anyone who lived in Shreveport, Louisiana in November 1989 and Gainesville, Florida in August of 1990. So around this time, a woman named Cindy Jurasic connected Crime Stoppers and told them to look for a man named Danny Rolling. So Cindy was from Shreveport, Louisiana, and she was familiar with the murders there and knew Danny. So she said Danny told her that he had a problem and liked to stick knives into people. That's a big problem.
I think
so he took off.
If someone told me that, which I mean, I guess like, would you call the police if like an acquaintance just randomly said something bizarre like that, you know?
And I think this is one of those things where I feel like I need context. Like, when did he say this? Did he just say like, Cindy, I got a problem. I like sticking people with knives. And you're just kind of like, were they high? Were they drinking? Was it like, you know how sometimes people just like say stupid stuff to like be a joke? Like, I need to know the context of like when this was said of, would you report it to the police? You know, like.
Yeah. Cause I feel like in hindsight, it's like, oh my God, why didn't you say something? But then I'm like, if I think about just tiny snippets of conversations I've had with people, again, no one has ever said this to me, but like something similar. I'm like, but would I call the police if it was just like a weird little, you know, I don't know.
I mean, and that's the thing too, is like, I think sometimes like I say weird things because I'm always just like, I wonder what blah, 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 you know, like you just think of weird stuff, especially when you're like listening to true crime and stuff. Like, you know, like me and my friends will be like, oh yeah, like if you were going to kill someone, how would you do it? You know, like joke, like, people do that all the time. So it's just kind of like, would you, especially like if he'd said like, I like sticking, like I'm responsible for this triple homicide, that definitely
that'd be a little different.
Like, sticking people with knives, you're just like, shut the fuck up, like,
right?
What are you talking
about?
You're
doing, weirdo? Go get another beer.
So he took off from Shreveport a few months after the murders, and he had also told her at one point he wanted to go somewhere warm with beautiful girls. She was on vacation in Florida when she heard about the murders there, and she felt that she needed to have the police look into them. So she's like, I'm just in case. So when police started investigating him, they found that he was also wanted for shooting his father in May of 1990, and he also had a very long rap sheet of bank robberies. So investigators start wondering if he might be responsible for their recent bank robbery. And they returned to the evidence they collected from where the 2 men were staying in the woods. And they finally listened to the tape. Again, we said it was coming back up. And they heard a man singing, "Mystery Rider, what's your name? You're a killer, a drifter, gone insane." He also talked about going down the wrong path and said he had to be on the run for the rest of his life now and that he had something to do. And eventually the man did reveal his name as Danny Harold Rolling, and they didn't even have to search for him because he was already being held 40 miles south of Gainesville in Marion County Jail, where he'd been arrested for a separate supermarket robbery. So this guy just cannot stop robbing.
No.
So 37-year-old Rolling also fit the FBI profile. His dad was retired from the Shreveport Police Department and they had a rocky relationship. He thought his father was very harsh and demanding. He had a history of being a peeping Tom, theft, breaking and entering, and sexual assaults. And he'd also been convicted of armed robbery in Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. So he is just like running rampant in the South here. He's just like robbing everywhere.
All over the place.
He was living with his father in May of 1990 when they got into an argument and Danny shot him before fleeing the scene. So Rolling would not answer any questions when interviewed, but he did consent to a blood sample. And in December, the DNA came back as a match to all 3 crime scenes in Florida. So he was charged with 5 counts first-degree murder, 3 counts sexual battery, and 3 counts armed robbery. So just a little history on Rolling here. So Danny Harold Rolling was born on May 26, 1954 to Claudia and James Rolling in Shreveport, Louisiana. So James was a police officer who never wanted children, and he was abusive to his wife and son. So the abuse continued when Danny's younger brother was born the next year. So Claudia tried to escape the relationship multiple times, but she did always return to James. Danny had failed 3rd grade from too many absences, and his school counselors described him as, quote, suffering from an inferiority complex with aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control.
Yikes.
Yeah, not great. Then when he was around 11, his mother was hospitalized for a suicide attempt, and Danny turned to drugs and alcohol. At age 14, his neighbors caught him spying in their daughter's window for the first time, and Danny was beaten by his father for this. He did eventually join the Air Force, but didn't stay in for very long. He claims he took acid more than 100 times during his time in the military. So that's a lot if you weren't in there for long.
Yeah, that's a lot for a lifetime. So,
I mean, true. Like, I feel like acid is like not an everyday drug.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're in the Manson family, because they did acid like every day.
I mean, and this is like,
and look what happened to them.
So maybe it's just like the 70s was acid time. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. If y'all were around hanging out in the 70s and doing a bunch of acid, let us know what the scene was like then.
Like, what was your average? Like, how much acid would you do a week?
Yeah.
Because I guess if you're doing it like twice a week, I mean, you could do it 100 times a year.
That's true. That's true.
But personally, for me, I don't feel like acid is like an everyday. Like, I don't feel like it's the same as weed. It's like, let me just get high every day. You know,
I mean, like, I feel like you can like go to work a little high on weed. You can't go to work tripping on acid.
And you know what? You can get a little high, but I feel like with acid, it's like all or nothing.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't think you can get a little high or a little drunk. I feel like you're just acid.
You're just acid, like 0 to 100. Courtney and I have obviously never done acid. So if we're completely wrong and just talking out of our ass, let us know. Because
I'm terrified of acid. Honestly, like, I'm just a little too scared of it.
Yeah.
If you have a good experience, I guess let me know. But one time someone told me on acid, they looked at a lava lamp and it looked like faces melting. And that was a good trip. And I was like,
oh, no. Yeah.
So anyway, off of our acid talk. He got married after being discharged from the Air Force, but in 1977, at the age of 23, his wife left him after he threatened to kill her.
A pretty good reason to leave. Yeah.
It's like, why are you getting divorced? He threatened to kill me. I approve.
Got it.
Yep. You get everything. Okay. After that, he raped a woman who looked like his ex-wife, and he also killed a woman in a car accident later that year. So from 1978 to 1990, Rolling committed a series of petty crimes, thefts, and robberies. Like we said, he had like convictions in like 3 different states at least. He was in and out of prison and held various odd jobs throughout these years. As previously mentioned, he did move home with his parents in Shreveport in 1989 and did attempt to kill his father in May of 1990. After he attempted the murder of his father, he broke into someone's house and stole their identity paperwork and became Michael Kennedy Jr. And he took a bus to Sarasota, Florida. And this was the month before he killed the 5 college students in Gainesville. So on September 8th, he was arrested for the robbery of a Winn-Dixie grocery store. So he was in custody when Florida He was in custody in Florida when the investigators made the connection between the Gainesville and Shreveport murders and received the tip to look into Danny Rawlings. Like we said, like they didn't have to look too hard. He was already in jail.
Yeah.
He was just kind of sitting there waiting for him.
Yeah. And they were like, oh, you're also responsible for all of these other things that are worse than the robberies.
Robbery.
My brain just blanked on what that word was. What is that called?
What is it called? So Danny Rawlings was set to go to trial in September of 1993. And the month before, he contacted authorities and said he would speak to them, but only through his cellmate. So police believe this was kind of his last attempt at having power and control. So they did allow his cellmate to relay all of the information as Rawlings confessed. He said he traveled through Gainesville by bicycle because it was the quickest way to get through town. He revealed he had returned to the Krista Hoyt crime scene because he thought he left his wallet there, and that's when he decided to decapitate her. He also said that while he was fighting with Manny Taboda, Tracy Paulies had entered the room after hearing the commotion and tried to escape and lock the door behind her, but Rawlings was able to break through it. He claimed he had multiple personalities, including Yanad, which is just Danny spelled backwards.
It was real creative on that one right there.
Yeah. He really tried. And he said that dark personality was the one that made him do it. And he also blamed his, quote, evil Gemini side. I would like to say I am personally a Gemini.
It's never made you murder people, Courtney?
Never, not once.
Interesting. Okay. I thought he was onto something, but I guess not.
Nope. I have not murdered anyone.
Yeah.
That I remember, I guess. But maybe...
Right? You tried to spell your name backwards?
Yeah, I'm trying to spell my name backwards. I don't even know how I would begin to pronounce it. Yentruk. I think you put the C in the wrong spot. Because it would be RUOC. So Ruok.
Yentuok. I forgot the
okay, you know what? I don't have an evil Gemini side, and most don't. He's just making up bullshit. Okay, he confessed. So he did confess to all 5 Gainesville murders, but refused to discuss the Grisham murders, although DNA would later confirm he was responsible for these murders as well. So even though he's not talking about them, he did commit them. I wonder too, because there was a child in that one, if maybe he didn't talk about it because he was like, I know what happens like in prison, like with child murders and stuff, you know?
He's like, I'm not going to claim that one right now.
Yeah. So he said he killed 8 people for the 8 years he spent in prison. And the FBI believed he would have kept killing if he'd not been arrested, and he just didn't want the FBI to take credit for stopping him. Therefore, he said his plan was to stop at 8 murders all along. He was like, that was my plan all along, you know. But again, this is just another power and control move where he's trying to act like he's more in control than he is.
And he also at this time wasn't admitting to the Grissom murders, but then he's saying, oh, I committed 8 murders. Okay, who are your other 3 then? Because you're not claiming them yet.
Yeah. So his lawyers planned to have him plead not guilty by reason of mental illness and to blame the murders on his abusive childhood. But Rawlings actually just confessed in open court instead. And at one point, Rawlings said he enjoyed watching the light go out of his victim's eyes, and that if he was convicted to life in prison, he would hang photos of his victims in his cells to look at every night and remember what he did.
Gross.
So disgusting.
Yeah.
Fucking disgusting. To no surprise, on April 20th, 1994, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. So Danny Rawlings was put to death on October 25th, 2006 at 52 years old. His last meal was a lobster tail with butter, butterfly shrimp with cocktail sauce, a baked potato with sour cream and butter, a strawberry cheesecake, and a sweet tea, which is a better last meal than some of the ones I feel like we hear.
Yeah.
Like at least, you know.
It's kind of complete, you know?
Yeah. You know, you got your meat, you got your carb, you got your dessert. Little special drink.
He doesn't have any vegetables. You know, we should probably work on that.
I mean, you're about to die, so why eat vegetables? I mean, if my last meal, I don't think there's going to be a single vegetable unless it's a carrot to dip in my ranch.
You know, I could go for some grilled zucchini for my last meal.
And that's when you know that Jaclyn's a sociopath. Okay. So I'm just kidding. So prior to the execution, he spoke with a pastor and handed him a note, which he confessed to the Grisham murder. So now, right before he dies, he's like, I'm confessing, even though they're like, yeah, we know.
We have your DNA, but cool. Thanks for,
Yeah. So Rowling sang a childhood hymn for his last words. 5 trees were planted across the University of Florida campus for the 5 victims, and writer Kevin Williamson became aware of the Gainesville murders and used them to create a screenplay of the horror movie Scream, which does revolve around the murder of students, the community panic, and the media frenzy that took place. And that is the murders of Sonia Larson, Christina Powell, Krista Hoyt, Manuel Thibodeau, Tracy Paulies, William Tom Grisham, Julie Grisham, and Sean Grisham.
Yeah, those are horrific. I mean,
very sad.
Always horrific, but like the ones that are just so over the top and like the mutilating the bodies and the posing the bodies, the decapitation, like.
And just the shit he said, like, I'm going to hang up pictures of my victims. Like, fuck you, you're disgusting.
Yeah, like, oh, I loved it and I still love it and I have no remorse and I just want to imagine it for the rest of my life. No, sir, you're a piece of shit. And I also feel like he's not well known. Like, he brutally like murdered these 8 people and he's not a household name. And I feel like the Gainesville Ripper isn't even really a household name except for the fact of Scream. I feel like that's the only reason that it became.
Yeah, I do wonder if like Scream hadn't come around, if he would be as well known.
Yeah.
And I wonder too if it's because he was caught semi quickly, not like really quickly, but like semi, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like if it had been like a Ted Bundy where it just like kept going, people would talk about him, or, you know, like the ones that are unsolved, but like, so the fact that like they kind of caught him more quickly, just thanks to the tip that came in, like thank God for her.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I don't really know. I mean, we see this a lot where it's just like these cases that are just horrific. And it's like, why is no one talking about these? Which I think we have one coming up in 2 weeks. That's like that too. So trying to do a lot of those.
Yes. And I have a lot more. That one's going to be interesting when we get to this part where we talk about why is this one not well known. I've seen a lot of information or read a lot of information in the book that I'm currently reading for that one that I feel like is going to be a good discussion point. Yeah, it's crazy the ones that get so much attention versus the others. Like I feel like this one is like a prime like opportunity, you know, for lack of a better word, for the ones that are usually like talked about and like shared and everything, and just really isn't. Like, or maybe I just never hear about it on other things. I don't know.
I mean, I've heard like a few podcasts cover it, but I feel like when like people are talking like in the true crime community, like this one isn't brought up a lot.
Yeah, and especially like his name specifically versus like the Gainesville Ripper.
Yeah, that's one of those things, like,
you know, the Scream murders.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the murderers who get like nicknames like Green River Killer, you know, all that, like usually you're like, yeah, I know it's this person, like I know the name, but like this one, I think prior to this deep dive, like if you said Gainesville Ripper, I don't know if I could have come up with his name.
No,
just like, you know.
Yeah. All right, so that is this week's case. Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is something very exciting happened this week, and that is I got to go see Sir Paul McCartney in concert, which was incredible. He did come to Knoxville, and the Beatles are one of my favorite bands of all time. I literally have a Beatles tattoo. So I was like, you know what? I have to go see him. And the tickets were kind of expensive, and I didn't have to travel, but he had no opening act, and he went on at 8 p.m. and literally played nonstop for 3 hours.
That is amazing.
As like an 80-year-old man.
Wow. That's incredible.
And the thing is too, like he had a lot of songs where it would just be him and the guitar, like Blackbird. He just did it like that. He would sit at the piano and play it.
God, that sounds amazing.
It was just so good. And like, he was still so good. You know what I mean? Like he still had his chops. He still had all that. He was funny. Kevin had trouble understanding him because his accent was so strong. He was like, I didn't realize his British accent was so strong. And I was like, yeah.
I guess
British.
Like, you're used to hearing people sing versus like when they start talking. Like, I remember the first time I heard like Keith Urban like speak, and I was like, who are you, sir?
Yeah, because he's Australian. Yeah. It's super weird.
Which is so like so different from like your singing voice, you know?
Yeah, and like he is older too, and it's like a loud arena, and people start cheering and yelling when he's talking. And so Kevin was like, I can't understand him. I can't understand the accent. But it was just incredible. It was an amazing concert. It was so fun. I'm pretty sure this is his last tour ever. So he claims, you know, sometimes they just can't stay away. But it was such an honor to be able to see like a living legend.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your like favorite song that he did?
Oof, that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Or you can do like top 3 if you need to.
Okay. Blackbird, definitely, because it was just him and the guitar singing it so good. He did Live and Let Die, which is like a Wings song. And it did scare me at first because he had like a little explosion thing going off. And with everything in the world, I was just like, oh my God, I'm being attacked. And then I was like, oh, it's okay. It's a part of the act. Oh, okay, we're fine.
Oh, that's supposed to
There's
happen.
fireworks.
Okay.
We're fine. But it was like a big production. Like, he had fireworks going and like all this stuff. So that one was like really, really cool. And then, I mean, obviously Let It Be and Hey Jude were like legendary, of course, but I feel like those are like my favorites in general. They can't compete. But he did end the set with the Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, the end. And I feel like that 3-song lead into each other is just one of the greatest like of all time. Yeah. So that was pretty incredible to watch. So it was just, it was amazing.
It sounds like just perfection.
Such a great show. Very worth how much I spent on those nosebleed tickets. But
Courtney, you weren't in the front row?
No, but there was a girl in the merch line who said she spent $1,000 on each ticket for her and her husband. So $2,000. Then she went to the merch line and spent $600 on merch. Wow. Like she bought, they had this like jean jacket, this like Paul McCartney jean jacket, which like looked cool, but like, what are you going to do with it? Yeah. $245. And she was like, worth it. I'm buying it. And I was like, okay. Girl, are you like independently wealthy or something? Right. Like, anyway. So that's my perk of the week because man, was that incredible. Yeah. But yeah, Jaclyn, what is your perk of the week?
Well, I mean, mine, you know, obviously isn't that exciting, but my perk of the week is that we have gotten to see family the last 2 weekends in a row. So that has been super exciting. Last weekend, we went up to Tennessee for our daughter's birthday party with all of our family and friends and got to go to a brewery and watch soccer and then just hang out at my aunt's house and just have people come over and just, you know, chill and relax and get to be around people and, you know, just hang out. And then this weekend, Andrew's dad and brother came down. So we got to hang out with them and go to the farmer's market and just do all kinds of, you know, fun, like Richmond-y things that we got to go do. And we got to go to Pocahontas State Park and we went for a hike and we saw a snake and Andrew did not completely run away. I mean, he kind of like started to run and then came back, you know what I mean? But
he's like, I have to face my fear.
Yeah, he was like, because he like heard me yell and he's like, what? As he's like running away, and then he's like, oh, maybe I should like, are you okay back there with my infant? You know, maybe I should check on you. But I almost stepped on it. It was like wrapped around it. So like the tree was like right at the edge of the trail and it was like wrapped around the tree, like on the trail side. And I was stepping over the tree root and almost like, and I was like, so like my foot almost went down and I was like,
oh God, that would have been bad.
If I would have just seen it, it'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to stay away from you. But like almost stepping on it was like when I yelled at Andrew's like, oh, what is it?
That reminds me of like, Kevin loves to tell this story where it was like 2020 and it was like my birthday. We'd been shut down for 2 months. I was stir crazy as fuck. And I was like, can we just go like hike in the mountains? Like that's safe. I'm out in the air. Let's find a trail that's kind of not that many people. So we walk literally like 0.2 in and there's a snake. I don't know if it was hissing, rattling. I don't know. But literally Kevin was like, well, and I literally just said, you know, this is a nice trail. It just feels like you're in nature. And then the snake was like hissing or rattling or something. And Kevin was like, okay, we just need to walk around it. And he turns around and he was like, you were gone. He was like, you were like back at the beginning of the trail by the time I turned around.
You're like, nope, not that much nature.
I was like, if I see one this early and this one this angry, I need to just go. It's not just a snake in the wild. It is an angry snake in the wild. Nope.
I
I'm
feel
done.
like when they're like right there, like, versus like they're just doing their thing and you can like, yeah, yeah. Not a fan of snakes over here.
No, but if you want to tell us about your concert experiences, your Paul McCartney experiences, if you went this tour, previous tour, what your favorite was, if you want to tell us about your Memorial Day weekend or your time with family or what you did in Richmond, if you were there or ever went, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can do so on Instagram at Caffeinated Crimes Pod. You can do on Twitter at Caff Crimes Pod. That's CAFF Crimes Pod. You can do so on Facebook at Caffeinated Crimes Podcast. You can email us at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail.com. We are on TikTok and YouTube at Caffeinated Crimes Podcast. Maybe you're not. You'll find us.
Yeah. And as we mentioned in the beginning, if you want to be like our newest patron, Shelby, and get a shout out and all kinds of fun goodies, you can do so at patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes. Just a reminder that through August, September, I don't know if we decide on a month, this summer-ish, all of our tiers are joining our monthly Google Hangout sessions. So all of our current patrons, no matter what tier you are on, and any new patrons that join between now and then, you will get to hang out with us during our monthly Google Hangouts. So make sure you head on over and do that.
Yeah, and be sure to rate us 5 stars on Apple or Spotify.
Yes.
But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.